Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host. Got a great one for you tonight. Two lovely ladies, Krys and Ariel, are going to be on the show. And Ariel was at the Ozark Mountain UFO festival that I was at, but unfortunately, we didn't connect there. But I saw too late that she was there. But anyway, I was on their show. We're going to talk a little bit about that, what they do, a show together. Krys has quite a background. She was involved in all sorts of things, and also a very good friend of a very good friend, Randall Nickerson, who I actually was in the town of nearby where he lives today, but he's out west where Krys lives. And next week I'll be hanging out with next weekend, I should say. I'll be hanging out a little bit with Randall Nickerson, and a shout out to Deb Coyle, former guest in the show. She and I had breakfast this morning out that way and made it back just in time for the show tonight. So the blog for this week, Charles Lear wrote UFOs in the Air Force Academy textbook, and a very interesting blog. They had it. If you read this blog, it's at podcastufo.com. You'll understand how confused our government basically was about what was going on with UFOs. In that textbook, it said that you may encounter UFOs that would have beings from another planet, basically. But it was removed, and it was not based on anything solid, but it's a very interesting blog. Check it out at podcastufo.com. I'm going to introduce our guests in just a minute, but I did want to talk about Thursday evening. I have a show with Alan Pierce, and this is just fascinating. I'm in the middle of this book here, reading it. And basically what he did was he was reading through Facebook COVID support pages and started reading these stories about people that were in comas, induced comas, medically induced comas, that was supposed to, put you in a state of rest. But these people did anything but rest. They had these strange, like, alternate lives that they came back, not even knowing the families they came back to. And in these, whatever they had, it was almost like an alternate reality. They went to work, they had jobs, they had spouses and families and children, and came back and had no idea who was waiting for them in the guest room. It's going to be a fascinating show. Check it out tonight. Thursday night, this coming Thursday night, the 25th. And that's at 7 p.m. right here on this YouTube channel. And that'll also go out as everything else shows do on the podcast feed. Tonight, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our guests, Krys Devine and Ariel Elizabeth. Welcome, both of you. Krys, you're muted. Just keep that in mind. There you are.
I'll try and remember. I have a dog in the background that makes noise. So
I love dogs, and dogs are fine on this show.
Okay. All right. Good.
Yeah. As long as they don't bark too much. You get some milk bones nearby so you can throw them.
Yeah. No, we'll keep him from doing that. At least my husband shall.
So, Krys, I just want to first of all say how you and I met. Yeah. And my producer Donna and you, and we all met in line at the last year, about a year from now, almost a year from now.
Wasn't it July 24th or 25th?
July 26th.
26th.
In Washington, D.C. We met in line, and you brought the donuts. You're always going to be remembered as the person that brought the donuts for everyone. Very nice.
And I forgot I brought donuts until you reminded me, actually. But yeah, I brought the donuts because I knew we'd be in line for quite some time, since Randall called me. He went over the night before. He was the first in line. He went at 9:00. And he was kind enough to say, go ahead and go to bed and I'll call you in the morning.
It's funny, I had called Randall, and my producer and I both slept in clothes, ready to go. And I said, Randall, if people start showing up, he spent the night overnight waiting in line, and crossed the street when they figured out that it was going to be easier to go through the tunnel. They would get in a little bit early. Luckily, someone had told him that. So he spent the night overnight there, and it was incredible. And I think it was 5:00 in the morning.
Yep.
He called me. I told him, if people start showing up, you call me. I don't care what time it is. So they started showing up. So I got there at 5:40, and we waited in line and met you. But I think the funniest thing about that whole situation is Randall snoring on the front seat in the middle of the hearing. He fell asleep.
Oh no, I didn't realize that. See, nobody told me that part of the story.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, it was a crazy time. But unfortunately, you were a couple of people behind myself and my producer, and did not get in the room as lucky as I was to get in.
Yeah, it was really a bummer, but we did enjoy the time we had in the overflow room. So
Yeah.
we took advantage of that moment because we got to react and laugh and it just have our emotional reaction out loud. So that was kind of nice.
Well, it's funny. When I was in the back of the room, I had an extender stick for my iPhone, and I said I was told you can't even take pictures, otherwise I would have brought great, better equipment or whatever. But the guy at the door said, "No, you can take pictures, you can film. I don't care. It's not as long as you don't disrupt anyone." So
Oh
anytime you look for a picture of the hearing in the back corner of the room, you will see a phone sticking up in the air. That's
it's
me.
you.
Yeah,
Nice.
I filmed the whole thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was a great experience.
It was amazing. Yes, it's very weird to think that a year has passed. So much has changed in our
I
world
know.
in that short amount of time.
I
So
know, but has it? I'm starting to wonder,
well,
it's like, has it or has not have things
been
more or less
the same.
stayed the same? And I don't really know what to think about
I
the
know.
way things are going. It's kind of we're a little bit in a dip, I think, which I've seen all, in the, 13 years of doing the show, I've seen the
Oh, I bet.
valleys and peaks. And then we get all excited, and then ends up being something like the Roswell slides, all a bunch of BS, you know, and
Yeah,
get all excited about everything. But
yeah. I
so
can.
you helped Randall Nickerson a lot with his, yeah. So what was your involvement with the
I
Ariel
really
phenomenon?
really it was after the show. He and I met him at the UFO Congress
Oh yeah.
in Mesa, and
Hmm.
he had mentioned he needed some help with some projects, and I was like, hey, I can go, I'll do it. And like literally on it's kind of probably one of the craziest things I have ever done. I mean, I literally counted on the fact that this person was a UFO celebrity to protect myself. Really kind of crazy. But
Any
so yeah,
regrets?
absolutely not. It was
Yeah.
really one of the most I spent a week out where he's at. He has a trailer next door. So I holed up in the trailer for the week and helped him on just various projects. I like to think I was helpful in pushing him to move the movie onto some of the platforms like Apple and stuff because he, you'll I'm sure he'll express on your show he went through some challenges with
Yes.
some licensing, some things that happened. So afterwards, it was kind of like, what do we do now? And it was a hard pill for him to swallow to put out, the film on those platforms when they take so much of your funding.
I
Um,
know, but good thing he didn't go to 1021,
right,
because
right,
they ended up, all these people are not getting any of their
yeah,
money, and
yeah,
lots and lot. I mean, we're talking, I believe, a huge amount of money that these people are all owed.
yeah.
And
Well, he had
it's
his own challenges, and he kind of is getting a little bit more. He doesn't name names, but he's a little bit more public about what happened, and it really just kind of screwed him, like the 1021 people, essentially. So yeah, so anyways, I just really just helped him. I helped him go through emails. It was just really kind. And then there's some other projects he was working on that I don't want to discuss, but that I was able to kind of assist with and participate in. And I'm more of an administrative person, operational person. That's kind of my background. So I was in healthcare for 30 years, but it's more systems, processes, organization, things like that. So I just said, hey, I can come out and help. And really, we just developed a friendship. It was really like a unique time to spend like a week in the life of somebody who has this fascinating life. And to see how he did the film and what he put into the film. And it was just really such a blessing. And then we've just connected ever since. We just stayed friends. And he relays, he listens to all my crazy theories and he bounces back them
Yep.
with me. And it's been just a fun friendship, somebody I can trust in the community that it's really hard to find
Oh
trustworthy.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it draws some interesting people. I'll put it that way. That's for
Mhm.
sure. So this is basically, the film. If you haven't seen it yet, I'm going to have Randall on for a few minutes next week. But this whole film, the Ariel phenomenon is just an amazing. He is such a extreme. What do I want to call him? He's just a perfectionist, and
Perfectionist.
his you look at his African photography of that he did there with the lions and elephants and giraffes and things like that, and it's amazing. His amazing work, and then he put that to this movie, that same uh, aspect to this movie, and did a wonderful job with it. And he's a wonderful person. So
Yeah.
anyway, and it's been really I've really enjoyed helping him in any way I can. I think that is such a story. It's what I consider the Ariel phenomenon. And there could be people listening that have no idea what we're talking about. When every time someone says 65 school children, it was more than that. But
Right.
the 65 were able to talk about it.
Yep.
And they all saw this, and they were not in an area where you get a TV program about UFOs.
No.
And the same thing with Deb Coyle, who I was with today. She was also in South Africa and had a schoolyard sighting herself before that. And,
wow.
she had one channel that, went off the air at whatever time, 9:00 at night. And there was no such thing as UFO. She had no idea what she was looking at.
Right.
And same with these children.
Yeah,
it's just one of
so
those incredible stories. Yeah. So now we got to find out about Ariel Elizabeth.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I know, not to be confused with the documentary.
And it's so funny. When I very first saw your name on Twitter, I go, oh, does she have something to do with the Ariel phenomenon or something like that?
That's what
How many times do
attracted me to
people
her.
say that? Yeah.
Yes, everyone thinks that at first. In fact, I'll often get people calling me Elizabeth because they don't think that Ariel is my first name. They think it's associated with the UFO sighting. So I'll have to say, no, my first name is actually Ariel. My middle name is Elizabeth. So
Yeah. But anyway, so it was a pleasure being on your show, and you two interviewing me. That was different, and that was fun. And so I'm going to throw some of those type of questions at y'all. I say that now because I live part-time in South Carolina. So, but so I guess I'm going to ask you first, Ariel. Everyone has kind of like their most the case that they think is the most profound one, and it's okay for you to say the Ariel School because it's in your name, But anyway, do you have like a go-to list of things that you just think are phenomenal as far as the UFO encounters?
I do, and I've really not scratched the surface when it comes to UFO cases and really doing deep dives. But I've definitely dabbled here and there. And of course, the Roswell, the Ariel School, those are compelling, and those are almost, synonymous with the UFO phenomenon at this point. But I really there's a couple that I really love. I really love Rendlesham Forest. I know that some people say that it's already been debunked, and that's fine, but I don't know. I find it very compelling. The multiple witnesses, the military involvement. I think there was even like physical evidence that was left behind, radiation levels, marks on the ground.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I've listened to some podcast episodes on that. And it's funny that you should talk about sightings that involve children, because one of my favorite sightings is called, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's called the Broadhaven Primary School UFO sighting. And it was a UFO sighting in Wales. It occurred in Wales. I think it was I think it was the 1970s. And it actually coincided with a UFO flap that was taking place during that time in Wales. And so people all over that area were seeing strange things in the sky. But at this elementary school, I think it was like 60, 70 kids who were at recess, and they saw a cigar shaped craft. And I think it landed kind of out past the schoolyard in a field. And the headmaster, the principal, kind of dismissed it, but they actually ended up having the children draw pictures of what they saw. And, sure enough, the pictures were all very eerily similar. So yeah, there it is. There it is. It's an interesting
Sounds a
one
lot
to
like
look
Ariel.
into.
That's so interesting. Very
Yeah.
similar. The drawings and
Yep.
wow, that's so
I remember
fascinating.
this kid too, and
Yes.
he turned out pretty good.
And it
As he got
changed
older.
it
Yeah,
changed these people's it changed just some of the trajectory of these kids' lives.
sure.
Wow,
Oh yeah, how
interesting.
can it not? I mean, and there's a lot of this is I've had this discussion. I had, Preston Dennett did a book on schoolyard, schoolyard sightings, and
Mhm.
I mean, the question comes up, like, why? And school kids are impressionable. They're
Mhm.
that age, and also, there's like an innocence about them. They're not going to get a machine gun and start firing, for
Yeah,
one.
That's
that's
a
um
really
true.
good point.
And
yeah,
it might be easier for the beings to even communicate telepathically with children because the children are most often the ones that report,
Yep.
feeling feelings or getting telepathic messages about the environment. And
yeah,
so, there might be something to that as well.
right, yeah. I think they're fascinating, all the schoolyard sightings. And besides Deb Coyle, who I just mentioned, earlier on, um I had someone contact me from Oakland that grew up in Oakland, California, and there was a bright gold object that came over their schoolyard when he was in the 60s when he was there. And there's a lot of them. I mean, until Preston Dennett's book came out, when he started researching all the different schoolyard encounters, I had no idea there were as many as there were. I think
Yeah.
there's over 100 documented schoolyard UFO sightings. And one of them, a person not that long ago, told me about them actually in 7th or 8th grade, something like that. These silver objects over their, when they were outside, and did not want to talk about it publicly. But I mean, it's pretty amazing how many times it seems to happen.
One of my theories, I have several because I was in the San Diego area, but where my sightings were in my backyard and over a canyon. There was a church there, but there was also a schoolyard there. And I always wondered because, the sightings were between 3 and 4 p.m., 4:30 p.m. always every day. And I would always wonder if there was something about the students getting out of school at that time and an energy or whatever it is.
Mhm.
So it has crossed my mind. I mean, I have no evidence of that. It's just something I do think about in relation to these other cases.
Right. I never do this enough. I want to thank everyone that's in chat and watching the show live here. And Thomas, no, I do not know of any schoolyard sightings in New Hampshire. But I will, if you want to pose a question as we go along here, please try to put it in caps, and I will get it up there. And I want to say hi to Shane. Shane is from down under. It's their winter, I do believe, down there.
Mhm. Yep.
But Shane has been chiming in on this show for at least 10 years. It's pretty amazing.
Oh, that's so cool.
So yeah. But and Bobby and I have known each other. Bobby Hernandez, Bobby and I met in North Carolina back in 2013. So 11 years ago. I was at a conference down there, and he went to the same conference, and we hung out. We had a really good time, and we've been in touch ever since.
It's
And
so amazing how that works in this community. That's one of the things I value.
oh, me too. I was just at the MUFON event, and one of the things I said when I started, I was in a hot tub, and somehow I ended up here. And it's like, and it's a beautiful place to be with
Mhm.
very interesting people. And I can say something that happened to MUFON I haven't really talked about, but because I think it's pretty funny. It sounds exciting at first, but it's not. So. Um, Krys Devine, who I've known from, we were on a show together a little while. He's in the New York MUFON. I think he's the head of the New York State MUFON, I believe. So he says, "Hey, there's two guys over at the bar," and so he says, "One's NSA and the other's FBI." So I go, "Really?" So wow, that's something. How do you know? And he says, "Because I saw this logo on a shirt," and I asked him. And he said, "Yeah, I'm retired and all that." So I go upstairs and tell my producer, Donna, I said, I can't believe this, sitting at the bar. And She goes, let me at them. Let me at them. I got to find out why they're here. So, we went down to the lobby.
I love her.
Went right up to them and like sat down right next to them, ready to buy them a drink and hear why they're here, And so they're both retired FBI. And we had long conversations with them both. And they're fascinated by the topic. It's Russ and TR. They came across country, drove across country to go to the MUFON event. They just wanted to check it out and see what it was like, and they really enjoyed it. But Russ wanted me to, he's from the NSA. He wanted to make sure that everyone knew he was not there for the NSA. He was there out of self-interest. He said, even if he had an interest in UFOs and had something to do with it, it's in these little tiny compartments. Everyone has a little bit of information. And of course, later on, TR from the former FBI said, that was her downfall. And the reason why 9/11 happened is because everything is compartmentalized and there's no one analyzing. They do now, that changed, but there's no one analyzing the overall data coming in. So it's the same thing. The NSA, as far as he said, if someone was working on something to do with UFOs, they would only know a little part of it. And then it's the overseer of a grouping that would know the full, what's going on. But, they keep it that way purposely. So no one can, leak secrets like Snowden or, someone like that, WikiLeaks. But fascinating. But they weren't there to, they weren't there in nefarious ways. They were just there out of curiosity. But fun to talk to them anyway.
I was, I can't remember which conference I was at, but maybe it was the Contact in the Desert. But somebody mentioned that there was a large volume of ex 3-letter agency people attending. I don't remember who said that to me, but it was pointed out, interestingly enough.
Well, it's like, I think there's a lot of interest. Now, let me tell you something that Russ said, and I think this is fascinating. I wanted everyone to hear this, okay? He set up something like it was the NSA's Wikipedia type of program. He helped set that up. So it was with all the government secrets that cannot be shared, and they're all in this like Wikipedia type search engine that, is very, very secure for them to get to. And guess what the number one search was when it went live? And these are by agents. Is there anything to the UFO topic? Number one search of everything.
Wow.
Everybody wanted to know.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
Really fascinating.
And so I go, well, but no information.
No
information.
answer.
Yeah. But anyway, I think that just demonstrates that there is a lot of interest in this topic. It doesn't matter what someone does, they're interested in this topic. And I think, possibly when you have that type of job, you have a lot of water cooler talk and things like that may, get your interest a little more in that type of thing. I'm not sure, but
yeah. And probably just the nature of investigative mindsets, those people who like to investigate things, because that's kind of how I feel. Like I have an interest in true crime as well for some reason. It's that mindset of figuring out the mystery of it. So
yeah, you can never figure out the brain. I mean, you look into some of these. I've watched a couple of those things, and it's like, and I do like, actually, that's an interest of mine as well. And it's fascinating only because you just can't understand the mindset of how these people go so far off, so wrong, I want to say. But let's see if we have any questions. No, again, anyone can post any questions, and we may even take calls a little bit later on. So you're actually in, Krys, you are actually in the Scottsdale or
Arizona. Yeah.
You're in Arizona.
The Phoenix area.
Yeah. And what's the area you're in, Ariel?
I am from Nebraska.
Oh, Nebraska. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Everyone always says the corn huskers.
I know. I
lived in Colorado for 3 years, and
I
knew a whole bunch of people from Nebraska that actually was working at an auction hall. I was in that were from Nebraska. And all they did was talk about football.
Yep.
Really?
It is a whole thing. And Yeah. No, yeah, Nebraska and their football. It's a whole thing.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you're actually telling me that you drove to the Ozarks that was only 8 hours from
Yes. Yes. That
Wow.
was it. So that was in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, and that was only about
That's right.
8 hours from us. So we could make it in a day. It was a really pretty drive.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Very
That's
nice. So let's talk a little bit about your program. It's not so easy to find if you search for it because
Oh
there's a
boy.
million elephant in the room type of
Yep.
podcasts, right?
Yep. Yep.
What's the right keyword?
We need some SEO help. That's definitely something we'd love to have. But yeah, so it is called The Elephant in the Room 411 on YouTube.
Oh,
So,
411.
yeah.
Oh, okay. I get it. Yep.
And so, yeah, so that might help find it easier, but it's still a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
But Ariel and I are on X, so we are usually found through there.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And when you find your guests, is it just the same way I do? You just reach out to them and they say yes or no, or you don't hear back from them? That's kind of what I found has happened. To start, it's always the hardest to start one of these things. I mean, someone contacted me. I've never had a guest on before, and I said, okay, I'll be on, because I know how hard it is to get something like that going. No one, it's hard. I reached out. First person I reached out to in 2011 was Stanton Friedman.
Wow.
And he ended up being on. He did not come on my show, but he ended up coming on like 4 or 5 people later, and he was on at least a dozen times. But but it's so difficult to get the first one. And finally, Steve Bassett said, "I'll be on." So
yeah.
So I always have a place for Steve Bassett because he helped me get started. So
it actually wasn't that difficult though for us, Krys.
Well,
was
you're
it?
pretty young ladies. That's what it is. I have to say.
We chalk it all up to our brains. I'm telling you.
That's right. I know. Well, that's how you you have to get the attraction first. Like people look at me and go, old guy. But anyway,
no, I think really to what Ariel's saying, it really Ariel had a really strong presence on X, and I had a semi-strong presence on X, and we had been on the platform for a couple of years and developed a lot of relationships. Yeah. And I think that helped. By the time we decided to start something, we already knew people. And and like, for example, Chrissy Newton was our first guest, and I met her through Randall. So it just, it worked out where that kind of gave us some momentum, and we weren't afraid. Of course, we've had our bigger turn downs by the bigger shows, but everybody's been so kind to us and really generous with their time. So
yeah, that's the way, I mean, I think it should be. And I don't know what people think that, people don't get paid. No one gets paid. They're just willing to come on and talk, and it's a lot of fun. And, I only discovered that because I started out with an antique podcast years before, and how people like, sure, I'll come on and talk, and, maybe I'll plug my whatever, my antique store or whatever it is, So here's a question here posed to you. Do either of our guests have any thoughts on the Betty and Barney Hill incident? Truth or hoax? Any thoughts on that one?
I tend to be, I guess maybe as I'm a little biased as an experiencer, so I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt that it is probably true. I have no reason not to. I haven't done a deep dive on most cases, to be honest with you. I kind of more of a skimmer right now as I'm going through school. I don't do a lot of deep dives, but I think it's probably real. What about you, Ariel?
Oh, I think something happened to them for sure. I don't know exactly what happened to them. There's always that question of, are people physically taken, or are they just experiencing some sort of altered state of consciousness where they think they're being taken? Right. But I definitely feel like something anomalous happened to them that night.
And I know that I know someone that actually spoke to Simonson, the hypnotist. And he basically said that he himself didn't really think that happened, but he thinks that they did believe. They weren't trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. Yeah. But he does think that the bottom line is they experienced something, and they they believe it.
Right.
You know, and that's kind of what John Mack, you know, used to say. You know, these people aren't crazy, but you know, something happened. You know, and they're, you know, they believe it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think that's it's a very powerful thing. You know, and speaking of that, I heard you say, Krys, um, you're an experiencer. Did you want to talk about that?
Sure. Excuse me. Sure. Yeah, I would consider myself an experiencer. About so in about March of 2021, I started hearing a couple of stories about UAPs over like New Mexico, and it struck me because my mom's from Clayton, New Mexico, and that's where it was flying over. And it got my attention, and then shortly after that, I got a hold of George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell. I like to call him my my gateway drug to ufology, because I just started listening to them, and they were talking about a couple of cases outside of San Diego, and it intrigued me. But I didn't realize like how, I guess, intrigued, or I quickly got into the subject. And by July 4th of that year is what I believe was my first, what I consciously was aware of, my first encounter over San Diego in my backyard. I believe it was an orb. It was going according to my measurements, and I've done the math. I obviously don't know the distance of the object, but it did go behind the trees, so I know it was on the other side of the canyon. And then I measured approximately the shortest distance it could have traveled, and it was going at least 227 miles an hour. It changed colors. It was bright. It was white, a small white light, and it was moving very fast. It would burst into bright white light, blue haze around it, and then sometimes it would turn into a smaller orange light. And it traversed across the canyon and back. My daughter, her boyfriend were there. We got it on several different cameras because I had a night vision camera that we actually captured it on, because I got into the topic and I decided to get a camera. And it's just total fluke. First time we took it out of the box, my daughter was filming, and I was chewing on a bag of chips. You can hear me, and we see something, and I'm like, get it, like I'm not really, get it. And then like once we start looking at it, it's just like, what is that? It is, this can't be a drone. It's moving way too fast. I'm in 2 flight zones. There's a lot of different analysis that I finally decided, okay, this is something. And then, of course, I was like intrigued. I started doing deep dives into my own experience, and realizing that I probably like open myself, up to just being open to having an experience. But what I've later learned is I was also going through like a deep traumatic time, exiting my career. I had a bunch of medical issues that were happening to me. And so it all was literally at the same time. So I have a very strong hunch that experience that people go through kind of instigates maybe contact or these anomalous experiences that people have. And then after that, I ended up seeing daily orbs almost on a daily basis. And I captured hundreds of them over my backyard. It's very hard to capture with a cell phone, but I did many witnesses. I saw black cubes going across my canyon. I've seen things that look like the jellyfish sort of going across the canyon. I've got those on film. So it's something in that area.
Wow.
To me, it's a hot spot, and once I studied more and learned about hot spots, and, I feel that it's there. And I've tried to get many people to go and investigate. I have one person who has a vehicle that they've outlined with like 10 measuring devices. So I'm hopeful that they'll get a chance to go down. And we would observe them. Like I could look up at the sky at 3:11 p.m., 4:11 p.m., and a little white orb would be there, and it would move and it would disappear. We would see other craft in the videos after that. So again, maybe it's something prosaic that people can argue, but whatever it was, it changed my experience of reality, my understanding of reality.
Yeah. Now, I'm just trying to get the timeline here. So did all this happen after you started listening to Jeremy Corbell or before?
I would say after, I mean, almost. As a matter of fact, one thing I remember very specifically is we came to Arizona for an event in May. Eric and I, my husband, drove back to San Diego through the desert, through the Salton Sea, and it was like really weird down there. I don't know if you've ever been to the Salton Sea, but it's this like really weird.
Oh yeah, I know where it is. Yeah,
hippie-ish, UFO stuff everywhere. Like, and we listened to them all day long. It was May the 4th be with you. And I'm not into sci-fi or anything, but it stuck out in my head because it was May 4th. I can tell you when I say the first sighting I was aware of was July 4th. I have a daytime orb capture on May 7th that I found later on, and I'm filming it, and it's daytime, big old white, flaky looking orb. And I'm telling my dad, well, technically it's a UFO. And like I completely forgot that I had that. So essentially May 4th was that trip. May 7th was that first orb. And then I have to tell you, and this is the crazy part that I tend to edit out of my story a lot, but there was a time when I was sitting over the canyon during this time reflecting on this, and I felt an impression of a number coming into my head, 32, 67, 45. Still have no idea what that is, but it felt meaningful. And this was right prior to my sighting. So it's a very strange series of events that happened and kind of took me through this dark night of the soul. And
can you give me that number one more time? I'm going to play the lottery. So
oh gosh.
I'll write that down.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's so weird. So anyway, that's kind of been the essence. And I've had several, I see orbs quite frequently at night. To me, they're not hard to see anymore, but I've had a couple daytime sightings since I've been here in Phoenix, which has been very few, but I have captured them. So I don't know what to make of it, other than this is why I'm here.
Wow. Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is like, I hear of certain people that just seem to see a lot, and it doesn't,
weird.
There's nothing that really makes any sense why, but it just happens. Maybe it is a hot spot, but this particular person I'm thinking of right now has moved to different places and still sees things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this person wanted to know if you ever reported any of these things.
It's funny. I cannot remember. I remember going through the process. I don't remember if I submitted it because Eric and I were just at Randall's event this weekend at MUFON, and he's like, did you ever report? And I said, for some reason, I remember feeling very frustrated in the reporting process at that point. So I either attempted to, I don't know if I submitted it, but I remember feeling overwhelmed, and I don't remember what the nature of the questions were, but if whatever it was didn't connect with me at the time.
So when I was the MC at the MUFON symposium, I asked for a show of hands for how many people thinks they have seen a UFO, and there was quite a few hands went up. And then I said, how many of you reported that sighting? And only one hand went up of all those people. And I said, it's not surprising at all. Usually it's like 10%, but this was one hand and probably, 30 or 40 people that said, they saw something they couldn't explain. And so I have to tell you, my sighting in 2007, I never reported it. And from what I understand, you can always report it.
Oh, wow.
But the only thing is that I don't remember the exact date. I don't even remember exactly what month it was. I know that sounds crazy, but in California, all the months seem to kind of blend together, as far as the weather goes and everything. So I just can't remember.
Well, one of the strangest things, Martin, that happened during that time, I was filling up all my jump drives or discs or whatever they're called with video, of all this footage I was capturing. And I was desperate one day. And so I found an old camera that had broke, and I went to it and I pulled out the disc that was in it. And I opened it up, and there was a series of pictures. And I remember the camera was broken, and my husband had even taken it to the camera shop. They said they couldn't fix it. And there was a series of pictures in there, a still photography, and they're like seconds apart. And it's literally the sky. I dated back, like, what were we doing on that date? We were traveling to Taft, California, where Eric's dad lives. So it was somewhere on that road, and there's a series of images of still shots, and you can see a tic tac. I mean, it formed like there's images of like almost like dark cloud spots at some point, and then very clear tic tac image, multiple shots of it, like over the road. And the thing about it is, none of us remember being like thinking we saw a UFO or stopping. It was 2013. But we have these pictures, and then I remembered the camera broke after that, and that's why I'd never taken the disc out.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
Interesting.
That is something. Someone had sent me, they had developed a film or something that was from an old camera. And it looks like a UFO. And I get a lot of people send me pictures all the time. And I hate to say this live, but believe one of you has to turn down your speakers a little bit. It's feeding back some. So as long as you can hear me talking, and there is a little feedback going through.
okay.
And I'm not sure who it's from.
Testing.
I still hear it coming through. So all you need to do is just hear it enough so you can hear what I'm saying. It's coming through again, but
Okay.
anyway, whatever's captured on film. Oh, it's coming through. Let's see. Okay, it's on your end, Krys, but I think you got it. It sounds pretty good now.
Okay.
So the lines are open if you'd like to call and ask our guests tonight some questions. That number is 855-472-5483. Every once in a while, someone will call in. We don't get a lot of callers. A lot of people. Hey, Mark Stanley, great musician. He's in the chat. Good to see you, Mark. But yeah, I mean, you got to admit this is a fascinating topic. That's why you're doing it. Ariel, did you ever have any UFO experience, or what made you have an interest in this topic to begin with?
I just feel like I've really had just an innate curiosity since I was a child. I've always been a sci-fi nerd. Grew up on Star Wars and Star Trek, and just kind of, an interest in astronomy, meteorology, curious about, nature, the mysteries of the world, just looking up at the skies and wondering if we're alone. That's just kind of always been something that I've wondered about and contemplated. But my maternal grandfather, he did have an experience with a metallic disc when he was a teenager. He and his friends were traveling in a car on Aurora Road, and they saw a metallic disc hovering at about the height of a telephone pole, and they all piled out of the car and they watched it hover there for 30 seconds, a minute, and then it zipped off, and no sonic boom, no noise. And ever since then, he's been very into the topic, and he has all the old Art Bell cassette tapes.
Oh.
And and so he was always kind of, when my grandma wasn't around, my grandma hated when he talked about aliens and UFOs around the grandkids. But when she would walk away, he would be like, "Hey, come here," and he'd like show me books. And so he really, I think, passed kind of that curiosity down onto me.
Well, that's awesome. That's really great to hear that. Because it seems like, I hear this a lot. There's not like it doesn't seem like a lot of young people actually show up at, events. But, some listener that came up to me that was pretty young, she's a grad student now when I was in Texas. So there are young people that have interest, and it's people like you that can get more people invigorated to, we have to keep this thing going, I think. And, I do feel, I said, I feel like we're in a lame spot. Possibly we are, but I also feel like there's momentum like we've never had before. Will there be more hearings? Will that make a difference? I don't know. We'll just have to wait and find out, and just go along and keep doing our thing. So what's some guests you would say that you had on the show that you find really interesting? Either one of you want to talk about that?
We've been really lucky and blessed by the community, and had just everyone we've loved having, but some that, that really stick out are like Dr. James Madden. He's a philosopher and a professor and an author. And he was really popular with our guests. He's just very good at taking some complex, philosophy and thoughts and applying it to the topic, and really kind of just giving a different perspective of kind of what his philosophy is of the topic. So that was a really great show. I don't know. We've had just some of our, my most favorite recent one, I think, was with Dove. And she's just a member of I shouldn't say just, but a member of the community who had never really gone on a podcast before. And she did a deep dive on the Kingman, Arizona case. And she did a phenomenal job. She broke it down in so much detail. She's a clear, researcher. And I really just appreciated that aspect of giving other people the opportunity to express their passions in a way, that, just kind of builds the community, I guess. I thought that was really special. So
Yeah, I agree. Those type of guests are really very interesting and special. I mean, I caught a guy one time, I forget exactly how, but I heard him say something about having meeting someone from Project Blue Book back when he was a kid. So I go, wait a minute. So I actually got him on the show. He's only done 2 shows that I'm aware of. I got him hooked up on another show, and he was fascinating. These people that have never talked about this before, he was only like 9 years old. He wrote the Air Force. Next thing you know, trying to remember who was leading Project Blue Book at the time, showed up at his door and
what?
with another guy, and they came in with books and said, did it look like this? Did it look like this? That type of thing. And then
Wow.
separated him from his parents to really grill him,
Wow. That's
but I love
crazy.
stories like that when someone's just, they're not like a regular, UFO person. They haven't talked about it.
Yeah.
I love having those type of people.
Martin, this is a totally off the wall random question, but have you ever tried to get Bob Lazar on your show?
No, I've I don't believe that Bob's coming on anytime soon. And
it just feels like there's been so many people that have gone after him trying to get him on their show for whatever reason, for, maybe they believe him, maybe they don't. I'm kind of, the jury's out for me on Bob. I don't know. I've kind of gone back and forth over the years on him, but I was just curious if you'd ever tried to get him on, because he's just one of those guests that people are always trying to hound and get on their show.
Yeah, no, I don't think he's coming on too many shows. I mean, I saw him in Phoenix, briefly, didn't talk to him or anything, but if I start giving my opinion on Bob Lazar, then I will get the continued hate mail that I usually get whenever I bring it up.
Oh boy.
So yeah, so
we'll steer it back then. Sorry about that.
well, that's all right. That's all right. I'll just tell you my philosophy, and I'll probably get the hate mail anyway. I had this discussion out at the MUFON conference with a couple of people that are all in with Bob Lazar, and I said, I do believe that he has enough information where he's probably taking on the persona of someone he knew very, very well, that knew all these inside details, but there's no way that he could have ever had that type of job, because they could not give that clearance to that type of person that has, his background. It just would not, he would not get that clearance. And of course, people always say, oh, there's ways around that and blah, 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 blah. But why? Why would they give a photo processor and someone that was involved in a bordello, this top secret clearance? It just wouldn't, I don't think it would ever happen. But I think that he might have been very close to someone that had all the information. And that's my take on it. If anyone wants to look at my blog about that, it's called Muddying the UFO Waters. And that's on the website. And I have a whole kinds of information and documents and things that are very, very thorough on Bob Lazar, and argues for and against whether his story is real. But it's always a fascinating topic to talk about. But there are people that have, it's just like everything else in this country. There's people that have very, very strong opinions. And if you don't see it my way, you're bad.
Yeah, it's really it's so unfortunate. I hope we can dial back some of that and get to a point where we can disagree on things and just talk about them, and like we used to.
Yes. So we need to know about Area 51. I'm not saying that Bob Lazar didn't know some things. If you were really listening to me, I am just basically saying that I think he knew someone that knew a lot of the things he knew. But he did not go to MIT. That is 100%, true. I know someone that did a deep dive and can go deeper than probably the government could expunge records, and he never had any, and he didn't even know, anything about MIT when he was questioned in a public venue. So he had no idea what the square was out in front of Kendall Squares right there. He had no idea anything about that. So anyway, the hate mail she'll arrive any day now. And that's
not
okay.
Not necessary.
Yeah. So we have anything exciting coming up on your show, and where can people find you? That's what they always want to know. I do believe I have a link. I have links. That's right. Links below down in the show notes for all that. And now let me just ask you, is it weekly, bi-weekly? It's bi-weekly, right?
It's about bi-weekly. Yeah. We've been trying to do every couple of weeks at least. And then of course, every once in a while.
Bi-monthly or bi-monthly. Right?
Bi-monthly.
Bi-monthly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Every 2 weeks. So correct.
Yeah. This is a publicist that I know here. Bambi, how are you doing? I would like to see the Vatican's representative for the UFO topics and learn about the observatory in the Southwest. Yeah, that's an amazing observatory from what I'm told. And supposedly, no, I could go conspiratorial, but there's they hint that they have a lot of information. I'll put it that way.
And that's here, right? In Phoenix area?
Yes, I think it is. I think it's in the Southwest.
I think I only recently heard about that. So yeah, it's something that would be cool to look into.
Yeah. So your show is bi-monthly. Every other month is?
Oh, no. It's twice a month.
Twice a month.
Oh, okay.
You know how some people, yeah.
I get it. Yeah, I was thinking backwards. Yeah, twice a month. Yep. Yeah, consistency is a rule. And do you actually go into other topics as well, or do you stick to the UFO topic mostly?
I think we pretty much stick to the UFO topic, right, Ariel? But we've had, we talk about
we talk about
and
we talk about all aspects connected to it. So we talk about consciousness. We get into sometimes cryptids. Science. We're going to be, hopefully, cross our fingers, have one of the a world renowned expert on simulation theory come on, hopefully in September. And so we'll dig into simulation theory and anything that basically connects to the UFO topic. The Book of Enoch, some of those biblical concepts, sometimes we dig into those. And so, we cover a lot. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's great. Well, I can't believe how fast things went. We're already at the end. And thank you both so much. And it's been a real pleasure getting to know both of you. And good luck with the show. Keep at it. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for having us and just giving us this opportunity. And we loved having you on our show. It was really fun. I still, that last story just sticks with me. And it's such a special story about how you guys met.
Oh, shucks. Now I'm going to have to put the link to that in the show notes. So people can
please do. That. It's such a great story. So
thank you. Yeah.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having us on. This was amazing. We love you, and we love what you're doing with your show. And it was such an honor and a privilege.
Well, thank you so much. All right, you two, take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. Bye now. Bye. All right. So we'll be back next week with Greg Gagarian, the professor. I can't remember where he's from. He's written another book. He's a very interesting guy. So you have to make sure you're back there next week right here for that same time, same place. Do not forget Thursday night. We have Alan Pierce on. It's based on consciousness as well, and alternate realities during a coma. Thank you all, and keep your eyes to the sky.